Understand that everything that's happening now, it does not define you. You define it. You get to choose your own experience in everything that's happening now around us. You get to choose your own reality. You get to choose how you allow these circumstances and these situations to define you. So understand that when you put your power in the hands of circumstances and situations, or even your past doesn't define you. You get to define your past. How is it that we get to the place of understanding that what we go through, our circumstances or our past, doesn't define us? We define it. Because when your perception, I'll say this in every video, when your perception changes, your thoughts change. When your thoughts change, everything else around you will begin to change. But it's only when you make a decision internally to understand that what you're going through does not define you. You define it. Understand that it may be a loss in jobs. It may be incomes dropping. People don't really understand how they're going to make meat, or how they're going to make ends meet, how they're going to feed their kids, how they're going to pay this bill and that bill. But when you understand the power of God's Spirit, when you understand the power of the universe, when you understand the power of the divine angels, you'll understand that what's going on around you doesn't define you. It doesn't define your creativity. It doesn't define who you are. It doesn't define your purpose. And it doesn't define your passions. It doesn't even define the other stream, the other things that you can be doing to bring income in, the other streams. It does not define that. So when we can understand that everything we're going through it does not define us. Now, is it up to you if you want it to define you? Yes, you have the option. That's why God said He gave everybody free will. So it's completely your choice whether you allow this to define you or not. It's your choice whether you allow everything around you to bring you and take you in a space of fear. And I always say that fear weakens your immune system, but you define your world around you. Your circumstances don't. Your past don't. And what's happening now does not define who you are. What's happening now does not define your passion. It does not define your purpose. And it does not define the creativity of who God created you to be and who you're destined to be. It does not change any of that. So I just encourage everybody to understand and really get it that yes, we are going through a time where we are all have to sit down. We all have been seated down. We all have been made to sit down. But understand too that when you can sit still enough, you'll understand why we had to be sat down. You'll understand why God was positioning us to sit down and not continue to keep running and running and running and running. So I just encourage everybody to understand that I know that we are all going through hard times right now, and I sympathize and I completely understand. I do. But I really want to encourage everybody to just understand that this doesn't have to define us. This doesn't have to define our happiness. This doesn't have to define our love for one another. This doesn't have to define our compassion. This doesn't even have to define what our purpose is. It doesn't. And I just encourage everybody to really understand that. Everything that's happening now wants to define who we are as people. But it doesn't have the power if you don't allow it. Nothing can have control over you, not unless you give it control. Nothing can define who you are, not unless you give a person or something permission to define who you are. Nothing and no one can take away your purpose and your passion and your creativity, not unless you allow them to take it away from you. Nothing and no one can take away your love, your compassion, who you are internally within yourself. Not unless you give that person or that situation permission. Nothing and nobody can even define your own healing. Not unless you allow circumstances and people to define your own healing. And I say this in every video. The greatest thing you can do is heal. The most powerfulest thing you can do is really allow yourself to be in a position where you can heal. Because when you start to really heal, you'll start to understand that everybody's perception and how everybody defined you was their definition of you, but it never was yours. And sometimes what happens is that our perception can get clouded, and the waters can get real dirty and just real polluted, because we have believed circumstances and people perception and definition of who we are. And the reason why we go through so many challenges or traumas or loss, whatever you want to call it, or triggers, is because once again we have to understand, and we coming back to this spiritual awakening of understanding that we have to come to a place where our past can no longer define who we are now. Our circumstance of what we're going through cannot define who I am now and where I'm going and where I'm headed to greatness. You know? The relationships I was in, that can't define who I am now. My family doesn't define who I am. My friends doesn't define who I am. You get to decide that for yourself. And it's only when you're willing to do the internal work to heal, where you'll be able to uncover your greatness. You'll be able to uncover so much potential that's been locked up within you that you never ever knew. It's only when you get to that place of defining yourself and understanding that people and situations don't define you, but you define it. That's when you tap into your power. That's when you tap into your greatness. That's when God, the universe, and the divine angels begin to give you downloads and ideas of other streams of income I can give you. That's when you begin to understand the depths of the energy you carry and the aura you carry. That's when you begin to understand the depths of understanding that I'm sitting down and I'm sitting still for a reason. So understand that God said He put before us life and death. And He gives us a choice freely. So you have to choose for yourself. Do you want the world, your family, your past, circumstances, people to define who you are? Or do you want to finally come to a place where you define who you are within yourself and walk in it? And be okay if you got to walk alone. Because sometimes it may cause you to have to walk alone. Sometimes it may cause you to have to let go of certain connections you once had. Sometimes it may cause you to just spend a lot of more time with yourself, falling in love with yourself, being with yourself. It may cause you sometime to just be in a place where it's just you and God, nobody else. But I promise you this. When you can choose not to continue to let your circumstances or what happened to you in the past, or how you grew up, or how you was treated as a child, or if you was, whatever your childhood was, no matter what it was, when you stop allowing that to define who you are, I promise you, you'll start to see the potential and tap into the purpose of who you really are and what you was created to do and why you're here now. I love you. Be blessed.